Welcome back to Clarity Convos for Wedding Pros podcast. I'm your host, Aislinn, and today I have a very special guest for you. We are doing a client case study with one of my favorite clients from my signature program, Success Accelerator program. Tierney, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I am so excited to do this with you today.
So am I. I'm so looking forward to this.
It's been a long time coming because we've done this before on Instagram Live, but when I asked you to be on the podcast, I was like, oh, this is going to be so fun for people to hear and so fun for us to recount all of the different things that you've done over the past 11 months, 12 months. I don't know how long it's been at this point.
I know. We're pushing a year now, which is awesome.
That's wild. Yay. Well, if you will go ahead and introduce yourself, let people know who you are, what you do, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, so I am Tierney. I am a wedding and motherhood photographer based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. I have been in business now for 11 years. So yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell.
And when did you start Success Accelerator program?
So I started Success Accelerator program last fall. I think the end of October was when I got onboarded.
And before you started SAP, I know you had tried other things before, and I know that you had been through some different stuff of this is what I want, but I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. So can you talk a little bit about that experience for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I am your typical photographer who heavily invested in education. For a while, I definitely had shiny object syndrome where I was like, oh, that looks fun. Let's try it. And it wasn't always the most strategic fit. I have worked in a one-on-one setting in the past, and while the strategy I received was super helpful, I did not have the mindset pieces to back up the strategy. And those two things together, they just go hand in hand. You can have the best strategies in the world, but if you don't believe, I can implement the strategy, I can do this, then you're not going to get the forward motion that you're wanting.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have someone who can both do the mindset side of things for coaching and also the strategy pieces. And I definitely lean heavily on mindset stuff because I know you can throw all the strategy in the world at something, and it does not matter if you don't back it up with energy and you don't back it up with conviction. You don't back it up with this feeling of, oh yeah, no, I actually am capable of that. You're going to sabotage the crap out of it if you don't have the mindset behind it.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
So before you joined SAP, where were you? What were you doing? What were you thinking? What was the kind of moment before you said yes?
I was operating from a huge place of burnout in my business. Like many photographers coming out of COVID, we all, had a lot of weddings. In 2021, I was expecting my second son. And 3 months before his due date, my husband came home and told me that he found out he was getting laid off. So instantly I went into problem solving mode, and we were like, okay, we're going to just book weddings. And what ended up happening was we booked all of these weddings, and he did end up finding further employment. So it was just a lot. With having a newborn, we also had at that time, 3-year-old. And we had some complications that ended up working themselves out with my youngest son too on top of that. So it was just a year of burnout that just compounded.
Yeah. And what did you think the solution was when you were in that season of burnout? Were you what were you thinking?
Honestly, I don't know that I was thinking. I was just doing.
Yeah.
I just had to do what had to be done. It was definitely, I was able to function through it, but mentally I was not in a great space at all.
Yeah. If you could go back to that season of you and just give her the biggest hug, what would you tell her?
I would tell her, pause. It's going to be okay. You do not have to jump right into action solving mode, and you need to be strategic in this season because you cannot do it all. For sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of photographers hit that point in their business where they do something to add things on because they think they have to for whatever reason, whether it's scarcity or whether it's your partner gets laid off or you want to book a lot of weddings, but you're only doing it from a place of either ego or a place of I have to do this because otherwise everything is going to fall apart. when we get into those seasons, like it's the consequences afterwards of like actually having to like photograph those weddings and actually having to do the work that you signed up for that a lot of people experience burnout. And I can see that in so many of my clients when they come to me, that they're in this almost place of like, okay, we can't do that again. Like, we absolutely cannot do that again. What do I do? So, for you, why did you sign up for SAP? Like, what was it about SAP that was like, oh, that's the solution to what I'm going through right now?
I think it was one of those things I knew I wanted to raise my prices, and I had some mental blocks around that. I also needed better boundaries in business and saw that was something that um, you helped people with implementing. And I definitely needed that hand holding to implement that for sure. And so I just really wanted my business to feel good again. Um, I wanted to be more strategic about who I agreed to work with, and also, like, once again, the boundary piece for sure.
Yeah. I can remember multiple conversations that we've had over the past like time that we've worked together around like boundary situations. And it's so interesting because like when you don't have someone like holding your hand, or you don't have someone who like has set really hard boundaries before and has like been okay on the other side of it, when you don't have that, you think like boundaries are scary, or boundaries are hard, or people are going to hate me, or people are going to like
Yes.
not want to refer me, or whatever. We make all these stories up around boundaries being bad. But I can speak from personal experience that boundaries have really helped me to like myself and like my business a lot more. And I think that you could probably like say something similar about your business and like the boundaries that you have in your business. So I'd love to kind of hear about like, being on the other side of setting some pretty difficult boundaries over the past year. How are you feeling? Like, how do you feel about boundaries now?
Oh, I'm a huge fan, and it's pretty cool because I used to live in this headspace of almost, how dare they make me use boundaries? Like, how dare they make me be confrontational? Like, and now I'm just like, you know what? This is just a part of it, and it's going to be okay. And like, you don't really get pushback for it. Like, I initially thought I was going to. Like,
Yeah.
you have to have policies and procedures in place because you're a business. Like, you have to have that structure.
I think one of the coolest things for you, like, is that, like, it's not like you're even getting to the point of setting hard boundaries at this point. Like, you just have policies and processes and, like, ways of communicating that start from the very, very beginning of your relationship with your clients. And I think that is so rare in the wedding industry. And I think it's so rare in, like, the photography industry that people even think that, like, oh, boundaries start, like, from the very first conversation we have, not I have to get confrontational. Now I have to set a boundary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So before you signed up for SAP, like when you were kind of like looking at the program and you were like, probably looking at the sales page, probably like following all my stories and just like trying to figure out, is this for me? What was the thing that you were like, I am so freaking excited about this? Like, what were some of those things for you that you were excited about?
I was definitely excited about making my business feel better.
Hmm.
I just remember like watching your stories and the way you always share about different client situations and the ways you would help people. Um, I was also really excited about like some of the strategic like upselling that you're able to do on the back end because I knew that was something that I wanted to implement more of. And we did through my albums and things this year. And that's been really awesome to see. So, yeah, those were the main things.
I'm so curious. I don't know if you know these numbers or not, like how much extra revenue you've built in this year just from upsells.
Goodness, off the top of my head, I am not sure. But I would say every client pretty much purchases an upsell, whether it's like a boudoir session, a bridal portrait session, an album on um, either with their when they book their collection or on the back end.
I think that's one of the coolest things that I get to teach you guys. Like, of course, like we get to talk about boundaries and we talk about communication, all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I really love is we look at your offers and I basically show you that your offers need to like kind of shift around a little bit in order for you to not kitchen sink every single client that you have. And what I mean by that is a lot of photographers will put everything into one package, which means there's never even the possibility of the client becoming like more than just the initial sale. So if the initial sale is, let's say, $5,000, but you include literally everything that they could possibly want in that $5,000, the sale will never grow to 8,000 or 10,000. It just never even has a chance. And I think a lot of photographers get stuck in this like income is stagnant and income is like always the same because they don't have like offers that actually allow income to grow.
Exactly. And I would say before SAP, I was definitely in that place. Like I was very much like, oh yeah, wedding photography, it's a feast or famine industry. Like we're broke in the summer and the winter and we're thriving in the spring and fall. Like and
Yeah.
that was just the way it was. And this year in January, just from like different upsells, like I think I had like a 7 or 8K month in January, which was pretty incredible. Like for that time of year compared to my past years, like that was so out of the ordinary in the best way possible.
Yeah, I love that for you guys so much. Like it makes my heart so happy because I do see the story a lot that is perpetuated of there's feast or famine. That's the only way that you can be in the wedding industry is feast or famine. And I'm like, but we don't have to. Like we can bring other like industries and other sales like psychology from other industries into the wedding industry. And I think so
Absolutely.
many people just like don't even have that education. And I
Exactly.
just I want so badly for you guys to have consistent income and to feel the stability of consistent income.
Yeah. And that's been a wonderful thing because my income has been much more stable this year compared to years past.
Yeah. One of the things that we're working on right now is like, how are you going to make sales in January? And like, as we're recording this right now, it's August. So, like, that's one thing I think in the wedding industry you don't see a lot of either is like planning further ahead than like a month or two. People, like, right now in the wedding industry, it's August 30th that we're recording this. People are like, oh, I should probably think about fall minis. And I'm like, oh, maybe we should talk about January.
Yeah, for sure. Like, no, actually, you probably should have been thinking about your fall minis in July.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love bringing that stuff to you guys inside of our Slack and inside of our calls to make sure that you're not just thinking in the like the weeds of the day to day. I want you thinking about your business in a way that it like is longer term than just the
Yes.
next like month that you're walking into.
Yes, for sure.
So when you were signing up for SAP, what were you nervous about? What were the things that you're like, "Oh, I don't think I want to look at that. I don't think that's going to be very fun to look at."
I mean, honestly, there was a piece of me that was nervous about the investment, which I will say totally has been worth it. I mean, I think when you're getting into the mindset stuff, like there is a sense of hesitation about it because that means you're gonna have to do some heavy, like internal work. Um, so yeah, that was definitely a piece that was nerve wracking.
Yeah, I was listening to something, I think it was like a podcast or something that was talking about how most people think that they are self-aware, but there's actually a very, very small amount of people who are actually self-aware.
Yeah.
Because when you are actually self-aware, you have to take responsibility for your actions, behaviors, and patterns. And people don't want to do that because that requires you to look deeper than just the surface level. And I
Oh,
think
for sure.
with you guys, you definitely have become incredibly self-aware, but also like there's like almost like this radical responsibility piece that like you've taken ownership of your decisions this year. You've taken ownership of how you show up in your business this year. And like, look how amazing your business is. Look how like amazing your life is now.
Yes, for sure. For sure. There definitely is that piece of like, oh no, like if I go forward with this mindset work, that's going to require me to like make some changes. Um, like as an Enneagram 4, like I always think, oh, I'm super self aware. And I have come to realize this year, like, oh no, maybe not as much as I thought.
Yeah. What were some of the mindsets that you've really like shifted this year? Like, are there any that really come to mind for you?
I think money mindset has been a big shift, getting out of that like feast or famine mindset. Like I realize like whatever number I see like in my accounting for at the beginning of the month, that doesn't mean that this is all of the income I'm bringing in this month. Like in the words of Aislinn, this is now my floor. Like this is my floor for the month. That's been a huge one for sure.
I love that. Yeah, one of the things that we talk about fairly often is like income floors and income ceilings. And I don't really believe in income ceilings because the truth is you can always make more money. If
Yeah.
you don't believe that currently, you need to be inside this program because you can always make more money. Like if Tierney, if like this month you were like, oh, I want to like make an extra 5K. And you know, we start that at the beginning of the month and we have that conversation. Okay, cool. Let's do it. Like you have an amount coming in. Cool. Let's make an extra 5K this month.
Yeah.
And that's such a different mentality than like seeing the number at the beginning of the month and being like, this is it. This is what September is.
Like, oh bummer. I'm broke.
Yeah, I love that. So talk to me a little bit about some of the shifts that you've made like business strategy wise, like either marketing or business or even like your niche has changed a little bit.
Oh yeah. So my niche is definitely in a shift right now where we have um, added in motherhood. So as I have embarked on that, it's kind of become a passion project. So definitely in the midst of expanding that alongside of weddings right now. And that's been a really fun shift in business this year.
Yeah, I've loved watching you make that decision and then like take action towards it because it can be really scary to change your niche. It can be really scary to make a pivot into, from weddings to motherhood or from elopements to intimate weddings or into like destination weddings or whatever changes you guys make. It can be really scary to do that. But I think that it's been so cool to watch you say, like, this is what I want to do and for us to like game plan how you're actually going to do that. And I would love to hear more about like what came up for you when you were making that decision to pivot.
Totally. I mean, honestly, it's been this like idea in my back pocket for over a year now. I mean, probably started some like last summer. And I know we had touched on it. I was like, hey, I have these motherhood collections. Like, maybe this can be a way to add some stability to income and, you know, get out of the feast or famine, right? And just as time went on, I started to feel more and more of a pull to that. But I didn't want to vocalize it to anybody because if I vocalized it, then it became real and that would mean change. And I'm reluctant to change. I don't like change. I'm very happy and content with things as they are. So, but back in the spring, I just mentioned it because it was just like this whisper in my brain that turned into a roar. And there was just no keeping that to myself anymore. And like once we vocalized it, like I swear, like you were like the wind beneath my wings, like in that moment, because it just kind of gave me that momentum that I needed to like just take it and run with it. And since then, I mean, we are working on refining my motherhood offerings at this point in time. And I've went from having like just one like motherhood client to having like probably 6 or 7 since we've started to make this change. And I'm constantly getting inquiries for it. And so it's been really wonderful.
I think it's so cool to watch you guys like decide something and then take action around it. And it's so cool to like be a safe space for like vocalizing those things because I know for me when I was making certain pivots and changes in my business, I didn't always have a safe space to like talk about it. Like when I was like, okay, I'm going to retire from weddings, I didn't go to my wedding industry friends to tell them that because when I did, it wasn't a safe space. There was a lot of just kind of like negativity around me like doing something different than what the norm was. So I think it's so incredibly important to have safe spaces where you can vocalize the things that are like a whisper. And it's because the thing is like it's not just having the safe space, it's having a space that someone's actually going to help you make that shift and make that like transition and like do it in a way that doesn't feel like you're ripping the like carpet out from under you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think like that's something like I've learned too is like this can be like this gradual pivot. Um, and that's really beautiful because I think, sometimes we can almost rush things. Like when we want something, we want it yesterday, right? I know I'm like that. And it's just been good to learn like you can do this with like strategy and in a way that feels good.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm so like adamant that I teach you guys like not just like the mindset pieces and not just the strategy pieces, but both of it. So
Yeah.
like as you're making your transition into doing a different niche or different like thing in your business, like we want to have like an exit plan and we want to have like communication with our clients and we want to have like this mindset of yes, I get to do this, but we don't want to make it like this like really quick like okay, tomorrow you are no longer doing this thing, you are doing this thing instead because that could be so scary to the brain and like it's going to drop kick you out and like you're going to like sabotage if that's how you do change and that's why I think so many people like struggle with it so much.
Oh, for sure.
So what were some of the things in the program that really stuck with you that like just have really changed a lot for you?
One of the things was chasing the fun in our business of what feels fun, and that's been really cool to see. Like just on the wedding side of things, of what feels good, like what clients feel really fun to work with, who do I want to attract more of, what type of weddings am I wanting? And then in addition, like really chasing the fun on this motherhood branch that we've added on to. Um, yeah.
I love that so much. I think I talk to you guys about that on pretty much a weekly basis. I'll say like, okay, but like, does it feel good? Or like, is this actually what you want? Or, what's something fun or juicy or exciting that you can go do for yourself? And I don't hear a lot of other programs talking about that. I don't hear a lot of other coaches really talking about that because a lot of times when you think about chasing the fun, you're thinking about chasing the next shiny thing. And there's a difference. There's a huge
There's
difference
a huge
between
difference.
between chasing the thing that feels like it's a part of you and it's something that you're just like, ooh, I have a whisper here. I really want to see where it goes. I want to see what happens. That's a very different energy than, okay, I have to learn how to do TikTok because that's the new thing and that's the thing that I have to do. It's just such a different like way of doing business. And I love that for you so much that you like get to chase the fun.
I do too. And I think like it's so easy to fall into, well, this is what the industry says I should be doing. Like, and instead, like, but does that actually feel right for your season of life, your business, for what your goals are? Because it's not an apples to apples comparison for everybody.
Yes. And like looking at like who you were before SAP and who you are now, I see so much self-trust in you and I see so much like just like almost reflection, but it's not like you spend days reflecting or months reflecting on something. It's more of like this like check-in moment for yourself. And I love that for you guys so much because that might not be something that you're used to, but
Yeah.
it's something you're cultivating, which I think is so incredibly important as a business owner.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I think I've gotten better in tune with what I actually want versus what I feel like I should be doing based off of, what's going on in the industry.
Yeah. I'm so curious. Like, do you see any like mindsets or any like, conversations that happen in the wedding industry now that you're just like, no, like it doesn't align with you anymore, even though it might have in the past?
Oh, totally. I mean, I know one thing we've talked about a lot this year are like the discussions around like the economy and people's bookings, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing is, like, your mindset really can play a lot into that. So I think like just trying to stay out of, those traps. If something's going on in a group and I'm seeing that constantly, like I'm muting that group. um, you know, threads can be a place where that happens, right? Where you're seeing people, I guess the algorithm knows me. So I just deleted threads because you know what? I don't want to engage with that. It's not helping my mindset. It doesn't help your anxiety. And I rather take action than like wallow in the anxiety of it all.
Which I think is so different than just like the industry norm. I literally was talking to a friend recently, and she was talking about how she's in a 24/7 text message group with other people in her niche,
Mhm.
not necessarily in her market, but in her niche. And she was just like, yeah, all they want to do is complain. And I was just like, why are you in there? Like,
Yeah.
what do you get other than commiserating? Like, which is just like cheap intimacy, like at best. Like, what do you get out of this? And she did not have an answer for me on that.
Well, maybe she'll drop out.
Maybe. But I think that's something really important. Like if you guys are listening to this like as an audience member and you're like, "Ooh, maybe I shouldn't be on threads or maybe I shouldn't be here or maybe I shouldn't be there." What I want you to do is I want you to like take a check-in moment with yourself and ask yourself, is the thing that I'm engaging with in front of me, maybe it's threads, maybe it's watching a certain Instagram story or a person or a Facebook group or whatever, does this actually fill my cup up? Does this make me feel good about myself? And if it does not make you feel good about yourself, or it feels like a drain on your energy, you have full permission. If you want my permission, fine, but you have your own permission to leave those spaces. And I think it's so incredibly important to like advocate for yourself in that way. So I love that you said that like you like mute things or that you deleted things because past versions of you might have stayed in those places or they might
Oh
have
yeah.
like been like, oh, but the end, everyone's here.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. The past version of me totally would have because it felt validating. And, I think when you're engaging with that, like, it kind of almost gives you permission to be lazy about it and just be like, well, this is just the way it is. It's just the economy we're in. So better luck next year. And, that's not how you want to be. Like, that's
yeah.
not going to actually fix the problem. So I'd
Yeah.
rather approach it from like an action taking lens and do what is within my power to engage differently with my own audience and, attract the right clients to my business.
And you've done that so much this year. Like, it's so cool to watch you guys celebrate your wins every single week. So on Fridays we do our little accountability thread, like where I have you tell me something that you're proud of, tell me like a big win, tell me a small win. And what I love so much is that over time, as you're inside of SAP, the wins start to become a lot more like A, like you get the cool financial wins, but like B, like a lot of it just starts to become like, I booked this client and I feel so freaking good about it. And that's very different than like, I booked another wedding. Okay, where's the next one?
Yeah.
And I love that so much because it really like has you pausing in gratitude more often than you might have if you didn't have a space like that is like really basically like forcing you guys to say
Oh, yeah.
what your wins are every single week.
Yes. Yes.
So I would love to hear like what are some of the biggest wins that we've had like from our time together? Like what are the things that come to mind for you?
I mean, definitely like mindset wins and shifts like that, like what we are kind of just talking about a little bit. Like, I, you know, I tend to be an anxious person, and especially in the realm of business, and so replacing that with gratitude is like a small like mental win that's been super helpful. And then I would say also, I mean, we have raised my prices, and like the clients that I've been booking for next year, they tend to gravitate towards like my highest wedding collection, which is really cool. And even then they'll still possibly consider add-ons, like with different portrait sessions and whatnot, so that's been really awesome.
I think one of the coolest ones that I've seen from you is like this shift into you're taking on less weddings,
Yeah.
but the weddings that you're taking on are the kind of weddings that you're just like, I love these people. These people love
Yes.
me. I know that we're going to have a fun time like creating together on their wedding day during the entire planning series. It's not this like weird like relationship that I see a lot of wedding professionals have where it's like almost like they put their clients on pedestals and their clients own their life. And I think it's really easy like if you don't know how to like shift this dynamic, it's really easy to fall into that. But for you, like I've watched you shift like not only like your niche of who you're like attracting, your messaging has changed and all of that kind of stuff, the things that we've worked on, but like you've just gotten so much more discerning around who you are willing to work with. And that is
Yeah.
incredible because it really is like this like I'll say it again, it's this space of like honoring and advocating for yourself of
It
like
is.
I want to work with people who want to work with me, and I
Yeah.
want to work with people who love to be around me and I love to be around them. That's
Sure.
like that to me is a huge win for you.
It is a huge win because I definitely used to be the pick me, choose me, love me photographer. And now I am in a place of, I want that mutual respect for one another. Um, you know, it needs to be a good fit both ways all around for sure.
Yeah. And I think like the way that you do that, like if you're like listening to this and you're like, but how? How do you do that? How do you get to that? I think part of it is like your energetics and boundaries. Part of it's communication and being able to communicate who you work for and like who works for you and like who do you create with. The other part of it is like your messaging. Your messaging has got to be on point if that's the kind of client you want. Because if your messaging is saying pick me and your messaging is saying like, oh, we're gonna be best friends and I'm gonna like be tied to the hip like with you, like of course you're going to attract clients that want that. And if you don't want that, like at some point, like you're gonna have to change your messaging.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And we made some like very subtle tweaks to my messaging, but it made a massive difference for sure in like who I was attracting.
Yeah, I've noticed like some of the conversations that we've had recently, you've said like you're attracting people who are grounded. You're attracting
Yes.
people who are kind and who are busy, but they want to work with you because they know you have a process. And that comes from the right kind of messaging. And if you're listening to this and you're like, what's the right kind of messaging? Well, it's going to depend on what you're trying to attract. Because for you, Tierney, like who were you trying to attract before SAP versus who are you trying to attract now?
So I used to attract and work with a lot of type A clients who required a lot of hand holding throughout the process. My process was very hands on. But as I went through my own life, we grew our family, my priorities naturally had to shift, and the amount of time I had definitely shifted too. So I needed to attract a different type of client who didn't really need quite as much hand holding. I still work incredibly well with like the organized bride, um, but just one who, you know, um, is a little more self sufficient.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's important, like with your process, that like you absolutely can have parts of your process be less hands on.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, another thing that's happened since being an SAP is we've been able to structure my processes to where they're still very hands on, but they're also very much automated. So that my clients still feel very well taken care of. Um, but it's not as much it doesn't require as much energy of me in the moment because everything is super streamlined and super automated.
Someone was on the fence about joining SAP. What would you tell them?
Oh, I would say absolutely do it. It's going to be such a win for you and for your business. Like, I feel like I made my investment back incredibly quickly. And just, I feel so much more satisfaction within my business. I'm so excited about the wedding clients I'm attracting, the motherhood clients that I'm attracting at this point. Um, like, we've been able to build out like additional income streams through, the different upsells and, of course, motherhood. Um, and you're just going to feel a lot better about your business. Um, I was just coming from a place of such burnout before SAP, I knew something had to change. Otherwise, I wasn't going to continue on doing this because you can only operate from a place of burnout, but for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone was like nervous about the investment or nervous about the 6 month commitment, what would you tell them?
I would say it's going to be okay. You're you're going to make the money back very very quickly, and that the 6 month commitment's a really good thing because there's just some initial work internally that you're going to be doing, and the results can take. You're going to have quick wins, but those like mental wins are going to be the ones that take a little bit more time. Um, and it's going to be really cool to see that progress from the very beginning till the end of your 6 months.
Yeah. And so many of my clients resign because in that first 6 months, you're like, oh, I'm a different person, like a completely different person. And I want to see
Absolutely.
where this keeps going.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. This was so much fun for me to like just kind of reflect back on like, what you've like done over the past year. It's been really incredible to watch you grow.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and thanks for your mentorship. Like, it truly has just been such a transformative year.
Yeah, it's been incredible. All right, my friends, that is it for today's episode. I will see you on the next one. Thanks for joining us today.